Good. Amen. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the School of the Word. Today, I'm just here to make a little introduction that we were saying, right, in our own feedback some time ago, that once a month we would have a formation topic, somehow to deepen in our own prayer and faith. So this morning we'll have that monthly, what we call a launching of a truth of our faith, to launch, to take off. And our truth is God as Father. So this morning we're going to listen to a talk, a model talk, no pressure, Stella, of how we can evangelize, with this truth of faith through our words as well. Of course, we do it by our actions, but in Verbum Day, we are also learning how to evangelize with our words and how powerful it can be when both words and actions go together when we reach out to others, no, to help them grow in their faith. So this morning, we're going to listen to that talk of how to use our words also, of course, our own lives by preaching as well. So let's prepare ourselves. We have that hand out there as a guide for us to follow the talk. And we invite now our speaker, Stella, to give us a talk.
Hello, good morning. You know me naman, I am Stella. We've been together for a long time. I'm married with a son who's also married, and I've been with Verbum Day for a long time, some years, maybe as long as some of you have been here as well. So let's just start with another song, just to uh, we've been talking about life and love. And last month, in our talks on the topic of life and love, di ba we explored how passionate we are for life and love, how we want to live life to the full and to experience everything that life has to offer, and how love is the motor of our lives, and how it can really motivate us to do so many things, and how sensitive and passionate we are for love. So the question is, why are we so sensitive and passionate for love? And our faith gives us really a beautiful answer. That is because our origin is love. Diba? If you want to understand how a thing is, we look at where it came from. And when, halimbawa, we are buying a product, we can be so conscious of the brand, diba? When we find a product of good quality, sometimes we turn it over inside out, look at the brand, and we say, ay, kaya pala. It comes from this company with this brand known for good quality. And then we patronize that brand. Or halimbawa, when we meet a person and you say, ay, ang galing naman ng taong ito, or very good. And then we meet the family of origin. We say, ay, kaya pala, the family is a very good family. Or we look at the person, di ba, for the first time. And then later on, we see the father, the mother, the siblings, and we say, ay, magkakamuka. Kaya pala, because the mother looks like this, the father looks like this, the siblings look like this. Oh, she or he belongs to that family, di ba? Magkakamukha. And so we also look at this, this raging passion sometimes we have for love, or this sensitivity for love, and we ask why? Why do we have this trait? And the answer that our faith gives us is this: because your life and my life come from love. Ay, kaya pala. And what a beautiful thing, don't you think? It is that our Lord asks us to believe in that our origin is love. And this is totally opposed sometimes, no, to the biggest lie we have in our world today that so many people live with, that my life is just a product of some random accident, some theory like the Big Bang, or that I am not loved, I am not lovable, I am not and never will be enough or worthy or of any value at all. And our world today, in so many big and subtle ways, no, continues to feed us with this lie until sometimes it can become so deeply ingrained and programmed in our minds. And so, diba, through this dense fog, you might say, of lies, our faith shines, no, this intense light of truth. No, you come from love. Your origin, my origin, is love. There is someone who thought of you and dreamed of you and formed you and loved you from the very beginning of time. And this someone has a face. And Jesus called this someone Father. In fact, the very first time we hear Jesus speak at 12 years old, he's already saying, Father, I must be in my Father's house. And repeatedly throughout his public ministry, over 100 times, Father, Father. And at the core of his teaching, when you pray, say, Father. And when he is at the Last Supper, no, with his disciples, it's constantly the Father. We've been reading that, no? I am in the Father and the Father is in me. Like we don't know anymore where one begins and the other ends, no? The Father, the heart, the axis and anchor of Jesus's life. And he called this Father Abba. Diba, we were talking last week about how the word love in Greek can mean so many things, and that so much is lost in translation. And Jesus used this word, Abba. Sorry, those are pictures of my father, no? Which is an Aramaic word meaning something like father, but different and more deeply personal and intimate, something like daddy, tatay, papa. But even that, we are told, still fails to completely capture, the closeness, the trust, and the childlike relationship that one has with someone he calls Abba. These are pictures of, sorry, me and my father and my mother. And here is me. So cute, no? I hope you will agree. No, maybe not. But no, what I like about the pictures that I'm so like nestled completely, no, in their laps, no, in their arms. And that the second picture is like he's teaching me to stand, and I yeah, so the father who and the mother who kept me in their arms, the father who taught me how to stand. I like my expression. No, it's like, oh my, don't leave me. I'm going to fall. And the father as well, who, my dad would put me and my brother up on the our small roof, no, and he would say, look at the sky, look at the stars, look at the sunset, no? So he taught us this ability to to look up, no, and to dream of possibility, no, and uh, and even this, no, even these very warm memories I have of my father, no, even this is just a faint glimmer of this cosmic love from which we all come, because he says, I am God and not man. So much more. No? And Jesus says he is not just my father, but our father. So this cosmic love is every bit as much ours as it is his. And that someone, this Abba, has spoken words of such enduring and magnificent love. You might say the best love letters to us ever written. And even before Jesus came, no, parang these words could not wait and were given to prophets even before Jesus came. Parang hindi makapaghintay na sabihin sa atin, di ba? So, one of them, no, Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And this is the voice of a loving creator who made us very personally. I formed you. I formed you, di ba? Not mass-produced. I formed you. Di ba last week we had that beautiful photo exhibit by Doc Rafa Rodriguez, and you could see, di ba, how those of us who were able to go, you could see how each of those photographs was so well planned and so thoughtfully considered. He didn't just like whip out a camera and take shots and then bahala na, di ba? No, he studied it, di ba? The light, the angle, the view, the time of day, the mood or the message he wanted each photograph to convey, to show us, di ba, that interior journey which he called catharsis. And di ba, all artists do this, di ba, before executing a painting or a photograph. They don't just whip out the tools and start, no? They think sometimes, no, deeply. What am I going to do? Diba? How am I going to create this? What message, what mood do I want to convey? How it will feel, no? And God is the same. I knew you. I thought about who you were, and I proceeded to form you to reflect that essence. So we are really not accidents, but each one thoughtfully and carefully and lovingly and personally created by God. And oh my, di ba how wonderfully we are made? I mean, just think of our human bodies, di ba? All of the intricate, elaborate, and interrelated systems of bone, muscle, tissue, organs, nerves that enable us to see, to hear, to walk, to run, to eat, to breathe, to think, to feel, to pray. Di ba? Grave when we think about it, how we are made. I praise you because I am wonderfully made. Wow. And each one of us, di ba, so unique and precious to Him. By name, I have called you. You are precious to me, and I love you. I think of all the parents here who really plan and prepare very carefully for the children that they bring into the world. Diba? Sometimes 9 months of careful preparation. And even before 9 months, diba? Isaiah 49:15 says, no, can a mother forget her infant or be without tenderness for the child of her womb? Almost impossible, di ba? Because the connection is so umbilical talaga, no? Can a mother forget her infant, be without tenderness for the child of her womb? And yet the Lord says, even if she should forget, I will never forget you. And this is the kind of love that I have for you. And this kind of unconditional care and love with which He created us, diba, continues in a love that is constantly attentive, detailed, and lavish. There is a passage, the next passage is, I give peoples in exchange for you, nations in exchange for your life. Do you remember a time when you maybe couldn't explain it, but you just longed for something more, like something more. My life is okay, or maybe it's not so okay, but isn't there something more? And I remember many years ago, I felt like this. No? I was happily married, happily family life naman. My parents were still at the time fairly generally healthy. I had some work projects, many good friends. I was active in the parish, and I was happy to be so. And already that, no, so many signs of the gentle care of the Lord in my life. No? And yet I remember feeling a certain kind of discontent. And I remember praying and asking the Lord, Lord, I know you've given me so many great things, but is there something more? Dangerous question to ask, no? And I remember he answered soon after that. I heard in a church announcement years ago, siguro like many of you did, from our parish formation ministry, an invitation to attend a regular Bible reflection organized by something called Verbum Day. And it was not far from me, not on the street where I lived, but a few streets away. And Verbum Day had just set up a formation house a few streets away from my own street and was now inviting people from our parish to this mysterious thing called a School of the Word. Wow, that got me. And I don't really travel, no, probably because of my situation in life. But the Lord gave to me right there where I lived the wealth of nations. What do I mean? In my first sow, I met James McTavish from the UK, Dan and Steve Drum, now fathers Dan and Steve Drum from Australia. Then Brother Jojo David, now Father David from Pampanga. Parang Miss Universe. Other brothers at the time from Latin America, no? And then later, I met Father Iwao from Japan, Father Herson from Venezuela. And then their superior came to visit, who was at the time Father Felipe from Portugal. And then later, hindi pa yun Father David from Spain. Father Ismael from Rome. Father Mike from Singapore. Father Lucio and Brother Aaron from Mexico. Brother Darwin, of course, from Cebu. Brothers from Vietnam, Father Bong from Cagayan de Oro, is it Bukidnon? Jen San, no? Plus, that's just the priests and the brothers, huh? We're not talking yet about the Bourbon Day sisters who also come from all these countries. And they were not just a set of new and interesting friends. Hindi ba? Di lang basta ganon. These were missionaries from different countries, giving their life and the power of their preaching and their example so that I and people like you and me could discover what living life to the full really really means. I give nations that you may learn how to live. I give peoples in exchange for you and nations in exchange for your life. Wow. I expressed this wish to the Lord for something more. And boy, he answered with this international powerhouse of life and love that still keeps going up to now. And I had man, a great number of good priest friends and sisters, but no, the Lord said, "You want more? Oh, yes, I'll give you more." And wow, I'm still here in Verbum Day after all those years because of that more, because of the nations he has sent, to make my life full and even more full. Unconditional, loves me now, no? And this love never leaves me, even now, many years later, no, when I am not any longer a spring chicken wanting more, but rather a senior chicken feeling like life has become sometimes a little bit too much. And so the next passage where he speaks to me, I'm sure you're familiar with this from Isaiah. When you pass through waters, I will be with you. Through rivers, you shall not be swept away. When you walk through fire, you shall not be burned, nor will the flames consume you. I remember this is not 5 years maybe ago, no, 3 years ago when our house virtually became like a hospital. I think I told you about this before. In one room was my mother, about 93, suffering from cancer in palliative care. And then in what was to be the last few months of her life, in another room was my father, physically frail, but already with developing dementia. And we had four caregivers at the time, sometimes six when there was a need. Uh, and because the physical demands of caring for them both, especially for us who were seniors, was already beyond us, no? And of course, nurses and doctors would come in a lot, including Doc Alan, you know? Uh, and it was difficult for me, to move from one room to another, and my siblings as well, no? Seeing these, my parents, both people whom I love very much, suffering in different kinds of ways. And nakakalungkot kasi, halimbawa, my mom, who had spent her whole life devoted to my dad, now could no longer even have the love of her life, di ba, at her bedside in her dying days, because he could no longer process, di ba, what was going on. And this would be too much for his frail mind to take in. And my dad, blissfully and mercifully unaware of her suffering, just in the next room, no? Just a wall separating that, no? Although many times, of course, he would ask to see her, but sometimes we had to think of all kinds of ways to distract him, because the sight of her bedridden and very weak at times, it would be too distressing for his feeble mind to take in. And much of this was also playing out during the pandemic years, the tail end of the pandemic years. So it was really hard, for me, my husband, my son, my siblings as well, because of the demands of managing this very complicated situation. It wasn't just complicated because of the physical and organizational demands, but also because of the emotions, the roller coaster of emotions at seeing our two parents, people whom we love, people who were wonderful, dynamic people, now slowly diminishing, And I felt like it was like the quote, no? Passing through uh, rivers, it many times it did feel like a raging river, and times I felt that I would be, swept away by the stress, the exhaustion, and the emotions, So many emotions, complex emotions, dealing with sickness, with death. But miraculously, no, we were not uh, uh, swept away. God, He did not take away this raging river, you might say, but He gave me and my family and my siblings the grace, not to be swept away by it. And of course, I also had a tremendous archangel in the form of my husband, Mario, no? So, and the Lord really sent amidst this river, a river of help. Now, my dad's former students, some of them doctors who would help, former students who were now priests who would come, no, and give communion and stay with us. And former students were friends in different ways, no, and who became our friends as well, who would support us. So this river of help, diba? And really this tremendous grace of my mom passing away peacefully, quietly, no, having had the last rites, communion, no. And so even if this grief really felt like a river, still the Lord was saying to me through the days after it, I am with you. And we really felt so accompanied by many people who helped us in different ways, prayed for us, and just were with us, no? And I felt the Lord's hand really orchestrating everything and really saying to me, when you pass through waters, I will be with you. Through rivers, you shall not be swept away. Next quote that I like this. I am with you always until the end of the age. My parents had a favorite song, which I think many of you might still know. The one of I'll be loving you always. Yeah, that was my parents' favorite song. And the line went, um, not for just an hour, not for just a day. Not for just a year, but and yeah, I do have, I guess, like you, many fears about facing tomorrow. Like all of you, about growing old, getting sick, perhaps watching my parents. Thank you, Chiki. That I know I someday I will be also like them, frail, needing help with life diminishing bit by bit, losing the people I love most in life. Diba? These are all our fears, diba? We fear sickness, we fear diminishing, we fear death. And so I really cling to the words of this Abba who says, yes, everything may pass away, but my love for you is everlasting. I will be with you always until the end of time. Always. And who can really promise this kind of love except our Abba? Still, how often it is that we run away from this love. And I think all of us can look back on times that we felt far from his love. Maybe we made some serious wrong turns in life, or maybe not really a big wrong turn. We just drifted away, diba? Caught up in the busyness and speed of life. And his words also tell us how much this hurts him and how he longs for us and misses us, just like a human parent misses a son or daughter who is far away. The heart of this father is revealed in lines like, Hosea, Ephraim, how could I part with you? How could I give you up? My heart is overwhelmed. My pity is stirred. There's another translation that goes, Ephraim, how could I part with you? My heart recoils from it. My whole being trembles at the thought. He cannot bear the distance. His heart recoils, diba? His whole self trembles at the thought. My heart is overwhelmed. These are very strong words, no? Don't you think? I remember one time when we lost our son, Joey, in UP Chapel of all places, di ba? And going to mass of all things. He was only around, no, not 5, 3 or 4, very small pa. And in his eagerness, di ba, to make pa-bless sa pare after communion, he kind of ran off too soon, di ba, to wait at the communion rail. Then suddenly everybody stood up for the final blessing. And then suddenly we couldn't see where he was. And he could not see us. Of course, kasi mga higante, di ba? It's like he's so small and everybody's so big, no? And I remember grabe yung moment na yon for me and Mario in that big crowd that was singing the recessional and then starting to disperse. We didn't really know where to look. Grabe talaga the pain, the panic, and the distress. A few minutes lang, but real agony on our part, no? Parang, oh no, where did he go? He's so small, so fragile, so helpless. How would he even know where to go or where to find us in this big crowd? And how do we find him among all these people? And what if he ran off to somewhere where we couldn't find him? And what if, all these what ifs, di ba? What if somebody picked him up and, some ill-intentioned person and brought him to where we could never find him again. Grabe. I mean, I don't need to explain this to parents, but wow, it was agony. And fortunately, we found him. I mean, a kind man found him and was carrying him and brought him up to the raised altar so that we, his parents, could see him. And he was really crying, no? Kasi one moment he was safe, and the next moment, totally lost. Diba? And wow, he didn't want to let go of us talaga, right after that. And we lost our son for only a few minutes, and it was agony. And I think of the father's agony when his children are lost or far away from him. The agony in the heart. And when I came across this passage from Song of Songs, wow, it's really the heart of a father, a mother, a parent when a child is lost. On my bed, I sought him, whom my soul loves. I can't sleep. I sought him, but I did not find him. Let me rise and go about the city through the streets and the squares, like Maria and I know, looking, where are you in UP Chapel? Him whom my soul loves. Have you seen him? If you remember the story of the prodigal son, no, in the Gospel of Luke, diba the younger son did such a terrible thing? He asked for his inheritance already, not even having the decency to wait till the inheritance was given to him, diba? Or not even having the decency to wait until his father had passed away. And then he goes off and uses this precious inheritance that his father had worked so hard for and squanders it on loose living until he became so poor that he went hungry, contenting himself with the food of pigs. Then he decides to return. And Luke 15:20 says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was moved with pity. He ran to him and clasped him in his arms and kissed him tenderly. So here we have a father who is not someone who can just stand aside and forget. I remember listening to a talk about the prodigal son before, and the speaker said, well, if I was that father, I would say, you are no longer my son. I would, you know, I would say, I certainly wouldn't meet you down the road. But here we find the father, no, as someone who was waiting I think he never stopped looking and waiting and watching for the return of that son. How do we know? Because the father saw the son while the son was still a long way off. No, how long, how far? I don't know. No, next village, a long way off. But it means that the father had never stopped searching, watching, and waiting for the missing son. And I imagine the distress and the agony was so intense that he couldn't, I imagine he couldn't sleep, never stopped watching and waiting uh, for any sign of the son returning. Kaya when that day finally came, when from a distance he saw the sun, and immediately he knew it, he recognized him. And probably he saw, even from a distance, what the son looked like now. Haggard, maybe thin, in dirty clothes, starving, maybe injured, maybe even fainting from hunger. And wala na. He lost it, di ba? He just ran. Yeah, he just clasped him in his arms and kissed him tenderly. Grabe, what a scene, di ba? The love and longing just pouring out of the father that he runs to his son. That is how much the Father longs for our return to his love. And I think this is what he says to all of us to come home. Come home always to my love. I can't bear it when you are far. And neither can we, actually. Di ba, when we travel, we were talking about this last week sa lunch, no? It doesn't take long, di ba, when we're in another country, it doesn't take long for us to long for home and to start looking for rice, sinigang, nilaga, di ba? It doesn't take long. Sometimes that very day you're already looking for a Chinese restaurant. Was it? Yeah. So and the son, just as the prodigal son, no, he thought he could really leave home. He thought he could sever that relationship, live far from his father's house, thought all this money and loose living would fill him up and make him really happy. But in the end, what happens? No? He ends up destitute, totally ruined, and eating the food of pigs. And he realized, oh, what have I done? How could I have even left home? Because there is no place like home. So in the end, when we are far from the Father's love, because He is our origin, our home, we eventually become starved and distressed, diba? Like fish out of water. So the message He wishes always to tell us is, come back. My love is your home. This is the place where you belong. Come home to my love. Let my words of love wash over you, put rings on your finger, finest robes on your back, and real food in your soul. Come back and discover the Father who loves you and longs to have you discover that you are, have always been, and will always be his beloved child. My father has dementia now, no? But it strikes me that sometimes there are days when he's at home, no, in the house that he built with my mom and the house that we always lived in. But sometimes he will say, I want to go home. I want to go home. And sometimes those are the days when he's too much in the care of caregivers and we're kind of busy and we don't have time. So I translate that is when he says, I want to go home, I want to go home. I want to be loved. And it strikes me that even in someone whose mind and body are failing, the Lord puts that desire of going back home. He can't quite explain it, but I want to go home. I want to go home. 2 years ago, my son, the same one who got lost, I got married, no? Oh, yeah. And it was a beautiful wedding. And I really cannot describe, no, all the emotions that went through Mario and me. And I felt, very, very grateful. But the empty nest syndrome, it kicks in. I know you know how I feel. All of you who have children far away, studying, working, or married now with families of their own. In the days that after my son got married, it was painful to pass by his room. Kasi it's now empty and silent because now he has another home of his own. Dati tatlo kami. Ngayon, balik sa dalawa. Di ba? And I remember I would close the door so that I could pretend that he was still there, di ba? Just sleeping. And how I missed him. There is this like hole in my heart and in Mario's heart that I know will probably never be filled, but it is how life is supposed to be. But there is that hole now. And it's still being Easter. I really used to wonder, why does Jesus still have the wounds of the crucifixion in his glorified body? I asked him this once, diba? Jesus, why do you still have the holes? Diba kasi Thomas would put his finger in, diba? Why do you still have the holes? You're glorified. It's Easter. And it's very funny, but it was like it's almost as if it was the Father who was answering me and saying, there are holes in my heart for all of my children who are far away, for whom I long and beg to come home. So he also looks at me, this Abba, this Father, and says, like in the Song of Songs, please come home. And please, have you seen my children who are lost? Have you seen him? Have you seen her? They whom my soul loves. And please, please help me bring my children home. For our prayer, we can we have handouts, no? Maybe it will help you, maybe it will not, but you can the passages more or less are there. We can pray with these questions. What struck you most from the guidelines and why? Number two, read the passages, I think, like a love letter from God, and talk to Him about it. And number three, what quality of God as Father am I invited to stay with at this time of my life?